Should we say yes to opportunity? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods, talking about lessons where you can change your life, put yourself back on course in small, easy to do steps. Today we're going to talk about saying yes to opportunity. This is a big lesson I learned when I was probably somewhere in the seventh grade, where I suddenly had chances. I think teachers saw in me a kid who needed help, who needed direction, who maybe was not getting it at home. But the idea is that we have to say yes to those opportunities. When people come to us and maybe see a good thing in us, or something comes across us that is going to change our lives, the first thing we have to do is say yes to ourselves. That's going to be the hardest part. Later in life, I found a book called Getting to Yes with Yourself by William Ury. This is a follow up to a classic book called Getting to Yes. And the idea behind this is that the very first person we have to convince of new opportunities is ourselves. If we're going to negotiate with someone else to help invest in our company or give us a new job or something like that, we have to go and invest in ourselves first to get ourselves to say yes. Think about, I think about the great nerd founders, the Michael Dells and the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates. They all had to get to yes with themselves to do the thing they were about to do before they did it with any investor, any spouse, anyone else they had to convince. It is hard to convince ourselves to take up a new thing. And we have to understand when we're listening to ourselves, really listen to our needs. We're clear on what we're asking of ourselves. Back when I was in seventh grade, and where, like I said, this is a lesson I started noticing, is I had a teacher come to me and she wanted me to become the person who developed the film. That's how long ago it was, for the yearbook staff and the newspaper staff. And she came to me and asked me if I would become the developer of it. And I said, well, I don't really know how to do this. And she said, I'll teach you. And I decided, after thinking about this, about what I needed and what I wanted, I said, well, I will do it for the next 6 months, which would have been the school year. And then I'll decide next year if I'll continue doing it. And she said, okay, that's a deal. I came up with what I needed as a negotiation. Now, let me tell you about the other opportunity. The reason she gave me this opportunity is that there was a Christmas show at our school, and she wanted someone to play this very easy rendition of a guitar of Silent Night. And I said, well, I don't know how to play the guitar. I am completely the most unmusical person you could have ever imagined. I imagined that this sounded very mechanical in the end. She says, I will show you how to play it. This is a very simple guitar rendition. And she did. I had a guitar. I don't ask me why I had a guitar. I thought in my head I was going to learn how to do a guitar. So she takes the guitar, she tunes it, and then she teaches me this very simple Silent Night rendition for the show. And I did it. I played it for the whole school. Like I said, I bet you it was horrible. But because I was the person who was willing to help her out, because clearly singing was not my thing, she gave me another opportunity to do something even bigger. What happened to that? Well, I became someone in high school who was on the yearbook staff. I knew how to develop film then. I ended up working for the local newspaper on weekends. I was the weekend photography reporter, and then I'd have to come back and develop my own film for the newspaper on weekends and sometimes other people's projects. And then in college, I became yearbook staff, which was a major college. And then I also became in charge of all the dark rooms, believe it or not. And that day, the dormitories all had dark rooms. I became the person who was in charge of all the dormitory dark rooms. I set up classes. I showed people how to do it to get people into it. I still am into photography to this day, even though we're not using film, but it became a lifelong love of mine because I said yes to Silent Night and then eventually said yes to becoming the darkroom person. It changed my life. It gave me something I love more than anything else. And so that's why saying yes to opportunities can be life changing, even if they're not seemingly important at that time. And so in this particular case, we just have to know exactly what it is, what the price tag is for us, understand what it is we're going to say yes to, whether it's the right thing, but you have to get to yes with yourself. If you're going to take on something new and big, that's where you have to do it. So in this book, he talks about something called your inner BATNA. And the inner BATNA is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So what that is it's like, what's the second best thing? What's the most realistic thing? So if I'm negotiating a raise with my boss, I say, well, I want a 20% raise. Pretty unrealistic. But maybe I can come in and say, well, what about a 5% raise? And you help put me through MBA, which I hope to get over the course of the next 3 years. Maybe we could come to some sort of negotiation. I knew someone who did that and got an MBA through his work when he couldn't get the other things that he wanted in his life. Maybe there's something more realistic that you can get that is good enough, that is exactly satisfying to you, but is not as hard to fulfill as what you were getting asked for before. And so that's what you're looking for. Whether you're negotiating with yourself or that's where you get the BATNA, but instead, what's your inner BATNA? So my inner BATNA with my teacher was, I will do this, but only as a test for the next 6 months. She got what she wanted, which was someone right now to develop film, and I got what I wanted, which was a way out in case I hated it. So there's ways of doing that with yourself. I mean, think about this. Like, if you got asked to be on a board or be a volunteer at a company, and they say, well, we would love for you to, volunteer here 20, 30 hours a week. You say, well, I have a job. I also have like 7 podcasts. I have to, really focus on that. Oh, well, what if you just, and so you think about it and say, I noticed that the one thing that you need more than anything is someone to set up your computer programs. What if I just did that? Because that's very valuable to you, and I'm good, I'm a nerd at that kind of thing. There's my inner BATNA. I'm not willing to volunteer myself 20 hours a week, but I am willing to help you with your computer problem that you're having. My friend, even so, or I even had a friend who was thinking about something that she knew someone was going to ask her. And I said, well, instead of saying yes to that, why don't you say yes to, I will work on these very specific projects for you because that's what you're really looking for, and not agree to the omnibus, I will volunteer unlimited numbers of hours. Limit it and say what you're willing to do, the inner BATNA. So you're going to come up with an alternative that is sufficient. That is what you're trying to do when negotiating with yourself to get you to say yes. Sometimes we have old fears or expectations. I know my friend gets overwhelmed because she is so talented at getting things done. A lot of people ask her for things, and a lot of times they are unlimited asks, that you're going to do this and it's going to take an unlimited amount of times from you, and she can't do it because she only has so much time. So she needs an escape route. And by negotiating this inner BATNA, figuring out internally what she's willing to accept, that will help her negotiate that BATNA with someone else. And then, just like there's a BATNA, there's something called a WATNA. That's worst alternative to negotiate agreement. What's the worst thing that would happen if you don't make this decision? So think about it this way, that if I didn't take this opportunity my teacher was giving me, what's the worst thing that would happen? Well, at the time I would have said nothing. Nothing would happen if I didn't take this opportunity. But instead, I would have missed out on a hobby that became a lifelong love for me. You think about it too, like if you're I bought a car a while ago, and at the time I wanted to buy a car 5 years ago. My car was 15 years old and had seen better days. What's the worst alternative if I don't buy a car? I knew what my BATNA was, so that I needed to spend X amount of money. I wasn't going to get in debt this amount. I had my own rules that were there. Or if you have a job opportunity and I just took a job recently and I figured out my budget and I thought, this is the money I need to make this work on my job. I had a dollar amount in mind, my WATNA. But the worst alternative would be something like, if I don't get the car, maybe I break down in the middle of the North Woods stuck because my car is just terrible. Or I don't apply for the job at all and I stay in this other company, which I liked, but it is in the tech industry. Maybe I get laid off. Maybe the company takes a turn for the worse. It just had been sold, something like that. Maybe it's just about being stuck. But what's the worst thing that's going to happen if you don't do this new thing? Think about that too. And we're talking about real fears and not overemphasized fears, not just failures, but maybe even just stagnation, but making sure that it's realistic. And then some ways that you can basically negotiate with yourself when trying to decide on a new opportunity is ask yourself, what do I really want? Now, in my friend's case, I think she wants more time. So is taking this new opportunity going to help her have more time? No. The other part of it is you want to drill down. And this is what they call the 5 whys. Simon Sinek wrote a whole book about this 5 whys too. But the idea is that you're going to keep asking why until you get to the real gut punch, right? So think about it like, I want to lose weight. Why? Well, because I want to do exciting, fun things and be healthy. Why? Because I really love hiking and adventures more than anything. Why? Because I am that person who gets stuck in my house. I could be the computer nerd who like I used to be, where I just played computer games all the time, and I learned how to break out of that. Ooh, now you see, you get to this inner truth. And then the ultimate why, because I see people around me who went into older age injured. They couldn't walk. They couldn't do the things they love to do and got housebound. I don't want that to happen to me. I want to be that person who eventually retires healthy so I can have adventures. So like I said, you keep asking yourself why until you get to the real gut punches. Then you listen to yourself with respect, compassion, and really do that deep dive. And then you figure out your BATNAs, your WATNAs, and what you're willing to do when you make a commitment or what you're not willing to do to make a commitment. Maybe even write up a little contract for yourself. I had someone just recently in my life write up a contract to try to help sort of define limitations, not a contract with a company, but contract with other people. This is what I'm willing to do, and this is what I'm not willing to do. So figuring out what you need, what you want, what is good enough right now, that's how you get to yes with yourself. I remember a while ago there was this movie from John Kerry called Yes Man, and the idea was that he told himself that whatever happened, whatever came his way, he was going to say yes, because I think his daughter said you always say no to everything, and so he decided he's going to be the yes man. And the movie's funny and it's silly about how he did it, but by saying yes, his opportunities in life expanded and they grew. And you can grow. You can say yes to things on your own terms and start something new in your life. Start something new in the direction your life is going. Opportunities are going to help you, like I said, grow. It's going to help you build in faith and in nature. It's going to help define what your limits are. Maybe sometimes you say yes to something and you go, ooh, that was a bad thing. But instead, this is where reach is going to happen and stretch is going to happen. And when you stretch, you become bigger, you become more capable, you become more able to do things, and it really deepens your life. And my friend during the pandemic, Allison, saw a person, I think, an extrovert who was struggling in the pandemic because we weren't allowed to basically leave our houses or go any place to like a friend's house. And she helped me get started into podcasting. It was something I wanted to do. I was actually in Toastmasters and I was going to create a podcast as part of my project with Toastmasters, but then the pandemic killed off Toastmasters. She helped me do it. She helped me start with small steps up and running as a podcast. And it changed my life. I love doing it. I love doing the podcast. I liked doing the YouTube channel. It changed the direction of my life from being just a consumer of content, reading and reading and reading books, which we talked about the last couple of weeks, into making something, into to giving back into this world. And that's really where I'm doing it. I think it's even honored by God that He wants us to not wait until we're fully qualified to do X, Y, and Z. He's looking for the people who are willing, who are saying yes to Him and looking for that faith to operate in our lives. So I think both on a secular basis and a religious basis, taking yes, convincing ourselves, going out there and getting opportunities is the direction to go. And it's one of those things that if you don't feel skilled at it, maybe you'll figure it out. You'll find a way. I started podcasting. I knew what I was doing there. I was more of a public speaker. I had done public speaking before, so I was more attuned to it. Then the YouTube idea came across, and I thought, I really need to go to YouTube. Cameras, I don't know how to do it. In fact, I just spent the week struggling with the software that updated itself and no longer worked the way I expected it to. In this week, I have recorded all of my podcasts for the week all 3 times over. In fact, Luke 11, which I did, I finally finished today, hopefully, the seventh time I recorded it because my software was not working. I learned a brand new software. You will get there. You'll figure out a way to make it happen. And so that's what's important. I think when we say yes to opportunities, like I said, it can change our lives. I was working for a company that I liked. It was a perfectly fine company and it just got sold, and it seemed like the new company was fine too. I enjoyed my job. I enjoyed what I did for a living. And this opportunity came along to work with one of my customers, a customer group that I loved. I love those people. They're so fantastic to work with. And when they said that they were looking for someone to be an expert in the software, I thought, I'm an expert in that software. I could do this. And boy, I will tell you, there were 4 months I just sat there in deciding it. Essentially, you apply for the job and it takes months and months and months to get, because that's just the process. I sat there for 4 months going, should I do this? Should I not do this? Should I do this? And I just sat there and I looked at the bottom line of what I needed inside of here and in my financial life to say yes to this opportunity. But I really wanted to say yes to this. I wanted to be a part of this new company. And maybe it's not going to work out. Maybe something will happen. But getting to yes with myself changed the course of my life. It made my life so much richer because of now the group of people I'm working with. Nothing wrong with the people I was working with, but this is just such a new aspect for me, and I'm just enjoying it so much. Getting to yes with yourself is one of the most important things you can do. It's one of those things where you're going to check to see if it aligns with your values. Do you have time? Do you have opportunity to do this? A place for growth, creativity, and just changing the nature of your life. And I hope that helps to change your life too. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for watching this. I hope this is making a difference for you. Please remember that you can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. I have other podcasts. You can find them all in YouTube and in your podcast app by looking for Jill from the North Woods. I am glad you're here. Please go ahead and leave a comment in the chat channel, and I look forward to hearing from you and what kind of struggles you're going through. Thanks so much.